knowing what you know today,
Mhm.
had about 50K and you wanted to start your own manufacturing shop,
Yeah.
how would you do it?
Honestly, what I would do is I would start scouring the area for aging shops and buy a shop. There is going to be such a massive exodus of aging out owners. But I mean, you got aging equipment, you got aging workforce. So the deals that are out there are phenomenal.
Welcome to Manufacturing Runs the World, the podcast that breaks down the industry you never think about but can't live without.
Tell me a little bit more about the podcast, like how it got started and what your aim is.
I've been working with manufacturing companies for maybe 20 years in
Mhm.
the website design and digital marketing side.
Yeah.
It's been a way for me to get to know some manufacturing companies. I'm actually learning more about manufacturing through a lot of these interviews.
My interest in, doing this with you is just forcing myself to get out of the comfort zone and talk about the challenges that we're seeing and why I love manufacturing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call myself a marketer, but I think I definitely, gravitate towards that area a little bit more. My family story, I'm second generation. Manufacturing kind of single-handedly lifted my dad out of poverty. And so, we've always talked about what our mission is here at Metafab, and really that's just to improve the lives of those around us. And, we make widgets, but hopefully we're building bridges to something bigger and better for everybody that works with us. And I mean, it's truly where our heart's at.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good segue. I mean, what is kind of the origin story?
Well, yeah, I mean, how much time do you got? I think the more exciting story really, it does start with my father. Late 70s, he was looking for something to do, didn't have great aspirations. The big joke was, I think his first quarter, semester, whatever, of college was to save enough money to go to Mexico, which he did, and blew all of his money and couldn't go back to school. So, I mean, he was a man of goals. He hit those goals and then came back and had to find a job, how to support a family, a young family, and found manufacturing. He started on the floor, bending metal, and just kind of through a wonderful series of events, and I think his own drive and some very key connections. He worked his way up, and so he always had the dream of starting his own business, and he did that through manufacturing. No college education beyond that first quarter, but never collected a degree, never got a formalized certification, but had that drive and built something great with manufacturing and provided a life for me and my brothers and my mom that would have otherwise been difficult. So that was kind of how the family got involved and why it's special to me. The business itself, Metafab, started in the 80s as a spin-off from a local test and measurement company. And so a lot of the fabricators left and started their own businesses doing kind of model shop prototyping for those big companies. For a while that sustained a certain level in the market of manufacturing, and then majority of it, would go offshore. And so it got started in the 80s. My dad bought Metafab specifically in 2002. We had 3 employees, 5,000 square feet, and then we grew up to about 50 employees, and we're in 30,000 square feet now.
Wow, that's amazing. I stalked your website. I looked at the video. The homepage video is super cool.
Yeah.
Dad looks straight out of Tron, I gotta say.
Yeah. So full story. I mean, also kind of important to the here and now where we're at. Sadly, he passed away 3 years ago.
Oh,
And, I think I appreciate it. There's always kind of that question in the back, like, how do we keep that video? Because it is a great video. And I think there's so much legacy just in that content and like I said, he's such a critical piece of our story that how do you both address the fact that he's passed, but then keep that kind of content and keep that story going? And I know there's ways to do it. It's just, we got to sit down and do that. But also that, pulls us into the here and now. We're now a family business who's gone through transition or continuing to go through succession. And I think that's, it's a worthwhile topic to talk about because so many businesses are faced with kind of exit plans and what's happening to manufacturing and, either how to do that successfully, how to do it unsuccessfully, or the different avenues that, different businesses can take.
Yeah, and is your business primarily, I mean, are you a product of the businesses around you, or I assume you do business all over the US?
Yeah, we're large. I would say we're largely a regional based business. Again, with mergers and acquisitions happening all over the place, our customer base does reach pretty far and wide. We ship very small amount. We ship internationally, but again, that's all just due to our local customer base. And so, yeah, we're largely a regional manufacturing based company.
Cool. Is there a specific industry that you guys serve?
I mean, equipment manufacturing, test and measurement. I mean, we're situated in Hillsboro, which is 15 miles west of Portland, Oregon. So largely dubbed Silicon Forest. There's a whole supply chain, obviously, here with semiconductor manufacturing. And so while we may not be a tier 1 supplier to any of those manufacturers, we're certainly tier 2, tier 3 supplier to a lot of that. So I would say Downstream, semiconductor and aerospace are pretty large percentages of our customer mix. But that being said, we have a lot of direct to consumer type products that are like lifestyle and home use products. We have a lot of aftermarket automotive, showpiece kind of, but high production. And we do a little bit of defense and military work.
Cool. Is that like Lockheed Steel?
Yeah, again, we're so far down that supply chain that where that ends up, no one knows. But yeah.
That's still an interesting story to me. You might be working on a small little piece that goes into a giant helicopter, but
Right.
that's still in the production line of something that is important to people's
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do a lot of aerospace, and a lot of the parts might be used. We don't do any like flight critical, no spars or ribs or anything like that, but we do mostly electronic enclosures for the power systems. But
Yeah.
those systems can end up in a commercial passenger airliner, or they can end up in a fighter plane. And I think, I prefer it this way. We don't always know.
Yeah.
Customers kind of insulate us from that. But we do have, we hold our ITAR registration, and so we do protect all that information the same way you'd be expected to.
I just think it's an interesting story. To me, manufacturing is the underlying industry that runs the entire world. Anything that you hold or use in a day, your mouse, your keyboard, has gone through some type of manufacturing process.
Absolutely. Whether you know it or not, you've most likely come in contact with something that was fabricated right here in our shop. And they're not always sexy products. Sometimes they're just things you need. And the one that's probably the most common, and we do tens of thousands of these in the past, is just security brackets for electronics. So
Yeah.
you go to an electronics retail outlet, and they got the little metal brackets that hold all your phone, the zip strings. We make tens of thousands of those things.
Cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, quite literally, most of us have held those things and never knowing or never even thinking about where was this produced, or, how many people's jobs is this supporting. And then also, if you fly on any commercial airliners, most likely you're sitting right next to something that we've built here in Portland, Oregon. So,
Yeah. I need to open a manufacturing shop, I think.
yeah. It's certainly, it's getting a sense of a revival, which I really appreciate. But I think there's so much still to the story that has to be, shaped and molded. And case in point, what we're here to talk about. So,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the big buzz recently is around automation,
Yeah.
4.0.
Mm.
What kind of things are you doing internally or not doing regarding automation?
Yeah, it's hard. CNC by nature is some automation there, but in terms of like cobot equipment, there's still an adoption that has to happen, not just from management who's making the purchases, but from the fabricators themselves that are having to work with that. And there's still a lot of fear, for lack of a better word, like, is this going to replace my jobs? And me personally, I kind of see it more as truly cohabitable workspaces, where it's going to just allow us to be more efficient and get more workflow through and aid the fabricators that we have. But that being said, you still have to have that buy-in, and it's a challenge.
Right.
And I think in the space that we're at, we're a contract manufacturer, and a lot of our jobs are in the hundreds to a couple thousand part runs. It just doesn't quite make sense yet to get a fully automated system to run jobs like that, because we might be turning over a piece of equipment 4 or 5 times throughout the day. And so it's all really about setups. The difficulty it is to teach new fabricators, train new fabricators on those setups. There's a lot of really cool, exciting projects coming out where, they're automating just the setup system, the setup part of
Oh,
a lot of the pieces of equipment we use. One I'm really excited about, but again, it's just a capital investment, is automatic tool changers for press brakes. I mean, it takes a 30-minute to 45-minute setup for a job, and it turns it into 5 minutes.
wow.
Again, so you go, how do you utilize that? Well, where I've seen it, use quite successfully is you get a couple of those things. You have your best press brake operators doing the initial setups, and then you have operators that are able to just pull up the system and then build up the program. The machine sets itself up, and then they're running it. And so you're able to kind of change the distribution of skill sets across your shop floor. You can train operators a little quicker, and they don't have to have the years of knowledge of setup and all the intricate knowledge you need to know with stretching metals or the way it folds. And so that's one way where I think automation will really help out, specifically with sheet metal or formative manufacturing. I truly believe that we're in the position we're in is because we have devalued manufacturing for decades. And that goes back to, why do we have a hard time convincing young students, people looking for career changes, that manufacturing is a good, viable option? Well, because we've been telling them that for years and years, without a degree, you're not going to be worth a darn, or fabrication is somehow below us, and we've lost the ability to actually produce great things in mass. We still can create great things here, but there's a lot of cost associated with that. So
Yeah.
So yeah, I think unfortunately we're still got a big challenge or hurdle to get over, just convincing enough people that this is a great place to be.
Right. This keeps coming up. I think I just had this conversation
Mhm.
identical where the price of college is even going up more and
Yeah,
more
yeah,
every
yeah,
year. And you graduate, few $100,000 in
yeah,
debt.
yeah.
Alternatively, I mean, at 18, you could get a job making 50, $60 an hour in the skills trade.
Mhm.
Why aren't more people doing that?
I talk about that a lot, and I do a lot of volunteer work with the local school districts. We have a workforce group that's kind of a cooperative between the city, county, community college, and the high school district. And I went and got my degree, and I'm certainly all for higher education, but my degree's in architecture. I'm not doing any architecture. Now, there's some crossover there, certainly, but the point being is that we tell students, high school students, so much that that's the only viable option. And at 18, we're somehow selecting some career we think we're going to do the rest of our lives, and the numbers don't support that. It's like, why not at 18 go work? I'm not saying you have to work for a sheet metal shop, but go work in healthcare, go work in fabrication or service or whatever, and find out what certificates or degrees are actually required, and then go to school and understand, like, is this something you want to do the rest of your life, or are there other more beneficial avenues like work sponsored education programs, things like that that could really help us, because it took me 20 years to pay off my loans, and I was getting after it. And I know so many people I graduated with are still carrying those loans, or they're just deferring them, because at 18 you're not really thinking about what interest rates are, and you're just chasing whatever your passion is or at that time and picking a career and then hoping that that's how it all works out. So
Yeah.
what I find too is that it's not even convincing the kids, the students, or even sometimes the teachers. It's convincing the parents. You have to
Yeah.
convince the parents that it's a viable option or a worthwhile career. I'll never forget, sitting around, probably about 100 different manufacturers in the area at some sort of event. The question was asked, how many of you have children? Let's say 60% of the hands went up. And then the next question was, how many of you are either encouraging or your children are in manufacturing? And out of 100 some odd people, 60 hands went up. I think there might have been 5 people that had still
Really?
hands up. So we're just as guilty of this. We're also not telling our children that manufacturing is an important and needed space.
That's insane to me. I
Yeah.
also just paid off my loans.
Yeah.
Took me 20, maybe 22, 23 years.
Congrats.
Thanks.
But
Yeah.
also, why? Like, why are we there?
Yeah. It's
Oh,
ridiculous. And I also am not using it. I'm a fine arts major. So
okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then another thing that I only bring it up because I want to have this conversation more. And so I don't have the solution and I don't know what to come of this. Like, post it. Maybe there's comments or maybe just conversation spark from this. Like, there's so much conversation about AI right now. And, what's AI going to do? How are you using it? What jobs is it going to replace? Is it going to replace manufacturing? Is it going to replace lawyering? I was having a conversation with a bunch of engineer and designers, and the comment was made that AI, this person didn't see AI outright replacing engineers or replacing designers, but what we see it replacing is a lot of the mundane tasks that young engineers used to have to do, spec writing or detailing prints and drawings. And it dawned on me that that's exactly what's happening. We're using these tools and technology to replace the things we don't want to do. But I think an adverse kind of side effect of that is we're actually taking away all of the action activities and functions that young designers, young engineers learn to build and develop viable products. Because what we see on our side is contract manufacturing. We have so many incomplete packages that arrive to us, and we don't own the inputs that companies bring to us, but we own the output that they're supposed to produce. And so it's adding time and scope to try to walk customers back down that road of fully developed, product design. And I got to think that that's, maybe something, not maybe full AI, but I think it is just we're either relying so much on templates, or I also think that it might have to do as we devalue the fabricator so much and we overvalue the 4-year university degree. We've got universities that are just churning out engineer after engineer after engineer without any true experience. And then we're letting them design these packages that I want to own part of that skill gap as well. It's hard to get the fabricators with all the years experience that's needed to make these things. But then we're also compounding the problem by just churning out a lot of degrees without the experience of understanding how to develop products in the first place. And so we're going to need to overcome a number of those things to get back to cruising altitude.
Yeah. Tell me, you mentioned your dad. This is kind of going back away
Yeah.
from skills gap conversation, but you mentioned your dad started the company and you were in 5,000 square feet. Uh,
Yeah.
Knowing what you know today, at about 50K, and you wanted to start your own manufacturing shop, how would you do it?
If I had $50,000 to start my own shop, honestly, what I would do is I would start scouring the area for aging shops and buy a shop. There is, I almost don't even want to say it because I don't want anyone else to know about it, but there is going to be such a massive exodus of aging out owner operators that are sitting on potential, but I mean, you got aging equipment, you got aging workforce. So the deals that are out there are phenomenal. I bought a company about 4 years ago, same sort of thing. We're positioning it slightly different as a same type of services. It's just, different equipment, slightly different processes, but we were able to pick it up for a great value because the operator was on their way out, didn't have a second generation that was interested, and they're at a size that just is not appealing to any private equity firms or
Right.
any strategic buyers. And so if you're just hungry enough to get into manufacturing and figure it out on your own, you can buy a lot of shops that have the equipment, they've got the labor, and more importantly, they got the customer base that can get you going. And I don't think you can find something necessarily for $50,000, but it's not a lot more than that. You could certainly finance.
Right, yeah, with $50,000, and if they already have a customer base, I
Yeah.
mean, that would speak very well to the banks to be able to give you the loan for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because there are a lot of regional manufacturers that are just kind of serving the community around them.
Hmm.
Even municipalities into the millions dollars
Yeah.
of contracts.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So yeah, I think I was thinking more about that. I was like, man, is there another way I could answer that that would be a little bit more helpful? So if I was going to try to answer that another way, like what would I go start with and buy? That's the difficulty because, getting back into the other questions, like why do people shop with us? What do we have that they don't? Well, you have very expensive equipment and we have years of experience of fabricating and building things with a great deal of success. And it's difficult to go get all of those things pulled in together. I would say it's hard to start from scratch without some considerable amount of funding. I mean, a typical piece of equipment for us is probably going to be $150,000 just to start. And that's some baseline brand new stuff. Now you can get used equipment, but you got to know what you're doing to work on the equipment itself in addition to just running it. How many numbers of pieces of equipment we have out there that's a couple $100,000 each. You're talking about millions of dollars of investment just to get the infrastructure in place and then the operations to run it. So I think $50,000 to go buy some equipment might be a difficult road.
Yeah.
If that were the case, maybe start really small. Actually, I do see a lot of people getting into manufacturing. It's hard for me to sometimes step out of my area of the sandbox because all I think about is sheet metal and CNC machining. But there's a whole lot of like real small hobby type shops starting, that start as hobby shops where a guy might buy a printer and put it in their basement and then make some, funky little product, but then be able to roll that into a few more printers that rolls that into, some other processes. I don't think you can get injection molding, but you can probably do some small format stuff.
Yeah, and then just slowly scale up.
Yeah.
Get
Yeah.
more machines, get a little more money going, save
Yeah.
up for a bigger machine.
Our growth model was, like I said, we bought Tim, my father. Tim's model was he bought the sheet metal shop. It was just cutting and forming. And then over the years, we started adding other services. We brought in welding, we brought in finishing, assembly, and all those add-ons we started bringing in. So that's always, what you can do too. Start with one small facet and then start building on the services that your customers are telling you they need. But going back to that other question, why do people shop with us? I think that's because it's really difficult to get full-fledged manufacturing started. A lot of people want to develop the products and then sell the ideas or sell the products, but setting up your own internal manufacturing can be quite difficult.
I was browsing your site. I noticed you had powder coating on there as well. Assume that's for some type of wheel company. Are you not allowed?
It's not. No, actually, it's not. I don't think they do any wheels. Actually,
Oh.
They do a lot of like exhaust systems.
Okay.
It's all under the hood. Some of it's very much showpiece, cosmetic. It's not at all performance. But then they have a number of performance systems that also get coated as well. So
Yeah.
they manufacture everything from the tubes, the systems to the shrouds, and then we're powder coating them all the same colors. So basically, you pop open your hood and it all matches the color scheme that you're going after. It might match your wheels. It might match your brake pads, or your calipers, all that kind of stuff.
Is your car set up like that?
Absolutely not. No, no. I drive. I'm 43, and I've like entered midlife to where my flex is that I drive a fully paid off Kia Optima SXL. So I mean, it's got all the bells and whistles, but I'm also old enough to remember when Kia came out on the market, and I swore I would never drive a Kia.
Yeah.
But I love it. It's paid off, and it disappears into the background easily.
Yeah. A paid off car is a great car, especially
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah. So yeah, no, but a number of our staff here do drive those cars, and they are customers of that company. And so I think that's also kind of a cool, little symbiotic relationship, because they'll nerd out. Our guys will nerd out on their colors also, and
Yeah.
I think go that extra mile to help them solve it. And so they got a great relationship.
That's definitely an engineer driving one of those. So yeah, I mean, how does someone work with you? How does someone get in touch? Is there a group of people or an industry that you're targeting currently?
Yeah, it's a great question. We dabble in medical, we dabble in defense, we dabble in aerospace, and those are all really large companies that just have a long onboarding process. If talking about maybe like the ideal company profile would be if you're making products in that 250 to 500 range, and you're doing a lot of high production parts, thin gauge sheet metal, we love to talk. I don't think there's any one specific industry. It's more so about size.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're in that space where you've got maybe a proven or a developing product that's using sheet metal, it's a great time to talk with us. If you're in a space that's for some reason or another limits you from going offshore, that's another great profile. Like I said, we do ITAR, anything that's controlled by exports. It has to be manufactured in the US. We're a great place. If you need some engineering assistance, we don't provide engineering and design work. Our customers own everything. Everything we do, we sign over to them. But if you need some of that manufacturing assistance, that's where we can help you out as well. Yeah, Justin, I appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun.
Appreciate the time, Tony.
Yeah. All right, take care.
Bye.